the news.
This will be very quick, but I thought this might be a good thing to kind of react to and maybe have our audience kind of talk about this a little bit more. So I don't think we talked about this story, definitely not formally. We might have mentioned it in passing, but as many of you might know, that actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner, most of us know him as Theodore Huxtable from The Cosby Show.
Theo.
Many of us grew up, me included, have grown up with that show. And actually, just as
Same.
an aside, Malcolm's character was probably low-key the catalyst of why I wanted to become a teacher. There was a scene where, and I remember it vividly, I think he was talking to us when he became a teacher after college or during college. And he was teaching a student who I believe was dyslexic. And he kind of figured out he was dyslexic because I think Theo figured out he was dyslexic as an adult.
Right.
So he recognized that his student having dyslexia as well. And he was talking to him about it in terms of, at least getting the evaluations needed so that he can get officially diagnosed and that he can get the support that he needed. So I think I remember that scene vividly because, wouldn't we want all teachers to advocate for us in that way? And I feel like that was probably one of among many situations that I saw growing up where I was like, I want to do that.
Right.
I want to be able to affect people like that. So I have to thank Malcolm. And as you guys know, he passed away a month ago. He accidentally drowned, apparently trying to save his daughter while swimming in Costa Rica. So yeah, just RIP to Malcolm-Jamal Warner, and just want to personally thank you for the role model that he was to me and to others like me, for seeing a positive Black man who basically was not a troublemaker, but he was someone I definitely looked up to growing up. But I saw this clip on Twitter, I believe the other day, and to be completely transparent, I have not seen this podcast. So this was a clip that was taken from the Not All Hood podcast.
Okay.
Never heard of it before. Haven't watched this podcast. I probably should watch it just to see more of the context. So just to be completely transparent. But this I saw on Twitter, which I thought was very interesting because this is something that I've mentioned, I think, to you personally before.
Right.
But I wanted to play it to see what our audience thinks about what he's saying, and we can talk about it a little bit. So
Okay.
you can go ahead and play the clip.
Cool.
At the end of the day, like when we talk about like really making change,
Yeah.
talk about revolution, right?
Right.
I don't believe that we are built for what it requires for real change and real revolution to happen.
And then 2025.
So by design, we're all such
You're right.
creatures of comfort, and it makes me think like, how up does it have to get before people like, okay, we have to.
We're almost there.
No.
We're almost.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody flinches. They still keep pushing the line and
true.
nobody moves.
No, that's true.
So let me ask you this though.
It's
So
true.
I think with anything, obviously, it's easier because you have a different perspective when you're on the outside of what's happening, and you can see what other people can't see. So it's easier to be able to point out things.
Mm-hmm.
Would you at any point go into politics?
No.
No.
Okay.
You know, because you told me that the other day.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry. I didn't.
Here's the reason why, though.
Yeah.
Because my agenda is to build kings, not be one.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on?
I mean, I was curious about why he asked, like, are either of you going to go into politics? Like, does he think that's what people need to be doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, But I mean, otherwise, like I do, and we'll get to it a bit in my segment, right? There's some interesting things that might be part of this, as far as like generational trauma, but like, I mean, we said this a bunch that like it's gonna require, if you think about it as like America's like in this abusive relationship with, the capital holders, like until it hits rock bottom, like it's not, people aren't going to be desperate enough to do the things necessary, so
Right. I don't know the woman's name in the clip, but she's saying we're almost there. I argue we are there. We've been there.
yeah, it's
So,
the pot's boiling, it's just like, it's just going to be one spark here or there that's going to set it off, like the powder keg is primed in my opinion, but
sure.
do people
But I
have the
think
convictions,
Right. But Malcolm said
So-
something that was interesting, which I think I've kind of said before, like we are living too comfortable, which I could see that in terms of if you're maybe someone who has more means,
Yeah.
absolutely.
but the
But
people
I
at the
think
bottom
especially
are
among and right,
fucking rough.
right,
So
right. But even but I say this more for, and I won't even include myself. Well, I'll say this for a person who has means, somewhat. Even as a person feels the discomfort, So, but maybe I think it's a lot of it into to being a person of color, um, maybe part of it in terms of like as you said, the generational trauma of slavery and like the reality of what the West perpetuated among my ancestors in this section of the world, like I think that carries a lot of weight with me and just kind of seeing the reality of that, basically throughout my life. And then by extension, within my community. So I think it kind of takes on a different spin for me in that regard. But I would argue for someone like you who comes from a more working class background and white,
yeah,
you would think that like the conditions are ripe for that kind of revolution. Like as I said earlier, like, I'm seeing a lot of TikToks as of late where people like you are complaining of how much meat is
right.
at Walmart.
Yep.
Like and not necessarily having enough money to pay for basic needs right now.
Well, that's
So
as much as my
I-
people of the South have like their own issues, I do think they recognize the problem because they live it. Like they're the ones who are like, man, the fucking gas expensive, and like I gotta get to work, and like I mean they are the working class as much as and like my thing is that like all the options that they're given and solutions they're given are terrible, and a lot of people don't want to come face to face with the reality that like America specifically classically has not changed without armed resistance. Like it just hasn't. Like you look at the Panthers, there's a reason that we took out the leaders of those movements. You look at like Malcolm X and his crew, like those people came strapped. Like they tend to not listen unless you can back it up.
Well, I'll say this. I agree with you to a point. When the revolution is among, I'm going to say it in this way, white people with means,
Yeah.
shit happens.
Yep.
For everyone else, they take them out. So revolution is only good when
I was watching a thing.
Look at our.
Indy sent it to me about controlled opposition was the part of the video, but it talked more about like sublimation, I think is what it's called, which is a vague psychological term of like, you know, it's the bread and circuses keep you complacent, right? You know, like the survival is much more important than like figuring out that you could survive better by taking on the system. Right. But they talk about it in a way as a form of control, limited protest, right? Where you know, you see it now with the protest against ICE. A lot of it's focused on a figurehead, right? A lot of it's directly focused at Trump, and we've seen this a bunch of times. We saw this with, you know, pick a protest in the last, especially ones that are, you know, nonprofit organizations fund, right? Like Greenpeace and, you know, Sunrise Movement and all those. You know, I think that they're willing to let you do that. Like they're fine with that. That makes it appear like a democracy anyway, right? You know, but they don't. I mean, you see it now, and we'll get to it in our next segment. They're not listening. They're doing exactly what the elites want them to do, regardless. You know, like, and that's my frustration. Is like, you know, he talks about we're not ready for a revolution. Do we even know what that looks like? Because I don't think people do. I don't think people understand what that entails completely. Like that requires taking on the government specifically, you know?
Right. Again, I said this to you. I think I said it on the show too. Like when having this, unrelated conversation with my dad when I was home last month. He said revolution is not joy.
No.
Like I think we almost romanticize, like especially reading it in history. Like if we talk about the American Revolution or any revolution that we've seen throughout history, is almost kind of romanticized, like as the thing that we think of the end in terms of what you might get out of it, that means the end, but we don't think about the journey of what it requires to get there, which involves death.
And what happens after? And exactly.
Right.
Like, you know, so, you know, it requires self-sacrifice and all sorts of crap that needs to happen, and organization on a level that I don't think, like, you know, you need to build military structures almost, you know, but like, or it has to be completely decentralized, spur of the moment, you know, and then we take those opportunities after. But I don't know.
But you mentioned, I do want to go back to what you were saying, like in terms of Malcolm asking, again, I'm not sure the names of the people on the podcast, but asking, would either one of you go into politics? I'm not sure. Again, unfortunately, I haven't seen the whole podcast, so I don't know in the context of why he would ask that, but I'm not sure if he necessarily meant it in terms of that's the end, like that's the way to do it, is to go to politics. I think he might just maybe asking in more theoretical way,
right?
Like in terms of, you know, like, would you consider it in terms of, and then the podcaster said no, but then like, I want to develop kings, like,
whatever that means.
I think what he meant was, I believe what he meant in that was,
I'd rather build up other people than do it myself, is what it sounded like.
Right. Which,
okay.
And I thought about this. I can go for that but revolution essentially means destroying the current system that we have. So if you're trying to raise kings within the current system that we currently have, we're just going to get Trumps. Essentially. And, you know, and the progeny of what that would be, you know, after that. So
which is
more or less destroying the system, or
why they want you to have controlled opposition, so that you do put your energy there as opposed to something separate, you know?
Right.
So, you know, and I've seen a lot of solutions be things like just opting out from that system as best you can, you know, like trying to become self-sufficient, forming those anarchist communes that they talked about in the 60s and 70s, you know, all that stuff, like before they push the counterculture into politics, you know, like, I don't know. I find I'll be interested to see what actually takes place, you know, like,
sure.
Because I think there's definitely like it's coming to a head one way or another coming up soon. And like they're gonna have to relinquish some control and allow the people to kind of feel like they've done something again. You know, like it's gotta swing back the other way, or, you know, the pitchforks and torches are gonna show up. Like,
right.
So we'll see. But yeah, I don't know.
But I brought this clip because I thought it was interesting that Malcolm kind of brought up something that we've shared before, but I'm not sure if comfortable would be the word to use. I kind of like how you kind of described it as kind of like a sublimation of your circumstance, that you're almost paralyzed to do something. Like you're just so caught up in
well, we really don't have a lot of power.
Mess,
like,
and just feeling overwhelmed by the system, which probably by design, that you feel worthless or small to fight against it. So it's just kind of like, I know my place, and I'm too, like, I'm making too much sacrifices as it is trying to survive. Like, I don't necessarily have the time or the energy or the know-how to even fight against something so huge.
Yeah.
So,
well, and all the people we've talked to, like, as far as, you know, we've asked some journalists who've been at this for quite a long time. All of them seem to be in agreement. Electoralism, not going to help you. Focusing on, and even trying to push politicians to get what you want, probably not going to be the thing to do. You know, we've had Vanessa, they talked about support the resistance elsewhere in the globe, you know, like, we've asked plenty of people. And full disclosure, we tend to not have, we've made it a point to not bring people running for office and or active politicians on this show, you know, like, partially because none of them that we've talked to previously have ever been able to give us the answer to the first step to whether they can actually take on the system of how are you going to stop yourself from being co-opted. None of them have an answer.
Well, I think it's not even that, but we've seen them on different shows. And I think the question is not necessarily being asked, or if it is, then
like, what are your immediate plans?
Have an answer to,
change needs to happen yesterday.
Or even like, if in the event that you do not make it to office, or if you fail, what's your alternate plan? And I think, like, and we've kind of seen it, it's like a lot of these politicians, they try and run for office, and the moment they lose, they just kind of slink back into the shadow. Not all, but many just kind of slink into the shadows as if they never ran at all, and the world keeps turning. And we don't necessarily need that right now. We need people to actually really be on the ground helping people. And as I keep saying, you know, I'm all a fan of mutual aid and all those kind of systems and all that as alternate lines of, you know, support for people. But if you're not affecting policy in any way, then, or if you're not using that as a way to force politicians to actually do something, which even now you gotta be careful with that. Again, look at the Black Panthers, for example. Then to me, it's almost kind of not worthless, but it's a dead end to me. So,
well, and
I think that's the next step.
You look at what the Panthers did. Like, I mean, yes, the education campaigns, which I think we are active in part in trying to do ourselves, right? You know, they also had the mutual aid. They helped out their brothers and sisters. You know, they also showed up when one of their brothers and sisters was taken in by the state. you know, to make sure that, but like they also prepared themselves for doing things like that, you know, and that's, I think, the thing that
Right.
a lot of the lefties over here don't want to admit is necessary, you know, of like getting people ready to take on the state like that, you know, getting
Right.
in the gym, making sure you're physically prepared for what might be happening if you're able. If you're not able, figuring out other ways to help that, like, to assist those who are, you know, like being able to produce the food and get, you know, anti, like, kettling tactics and all this stuff that is required, you know. I don't see people even doing that yet, you know. So, because I think they're scared. I think that's the thing. It's a scary thing to think about doing, you know, and no one wants to go and that's literally like, you know, the like French resistance and stuff. Like that's what you're talking about, you know. You see that even with like with Palestine Action and what comes after that. You know, those guys are thinking about things of like, how do I actually take on the system, you know, and at least slow it down, you know. So I don't know, but I don't have the answers yet.
Yeah, and we don't expect you guys to have the answers too, but I think to close the segment, I think, you know, I guess Malcolm posed an interesting question, but I think just in terms of the fact that people are are paralyzed to fight against the very system that we're in, I think it's something that we should be talking about a little bit more. But then, like, what are the practical steps and the means that we need to take in order to fight against it? If that is even possible. And like, I don't have the answer to that. But I think it is something worth mentioning in terms of dire straits that we're in and probably will be about to get into over the next year, just given kind of what we're seeing economically with folks right now. But I do think there is some level of the illusion of comfort that I think people are trying to grab onto that is working towards the idea of making them complacent, of being just kind of wallowing in their almost self-defeat of living, I would argue.
Yeah.
But let us know in the chat, or let us know if you're watching this as a segment in the comments. What do you think? Do you agree with what Malcolm-Jamal said? And don't forget to like and subscribe so you're able to see more content like this. And please share to fight the suppression that we're seeing on YouTube. And make sure you help us get to free K by liking and subscribing so that we're able to grow without YouTube's help. So, which is the reality with our channel right now. And
yeah,
as always, thanks for watching.